This episode contains discussion of drug use, crime scenes, and violence. Listener discretion is advised. This is The Fall Line. Warner Robins, Georgia. It's a city of roughly 80,000 residents in the central part of the state, only 30 minutes from Macon. Warner Robins has grown by a lot in the last 3 decades, doubled, in fact, based on census records. With an Air Force base located in the same county, Houston, Warner Robins' identity is in many ways tied to the presence of Robins Air Force Base, which is, per its own official website, the largest single-site industrial complex in Georgia. And Warner Robins' official city motto is, "Every day in Middle Georgia is Armed Forces Appreciation Day." Based on local real estate reports, the city is a popular destination for families looking for affordable housing in Middle Georgia. The military is the area's biggest employer, no surprise there, but there are also lots of jobs in healthcare, county government, industrial plants, and education. And while there are families that come and go, that's the nature of any military town or county, there are plenty who've been there for generations. That means that there should be people who remember, even decades later, bad things that happened in town. People who might be able to assist in closing a cold case. Though crime rates have risen roughly on par with the rest of Georgia's cities, there aren't many long-standing missing persons cases in Warner Robins. By Warner Robins Police Department's Sergeant Justin Clark's count, there are 3. A case from 2016 that another detective is working, and 2 that he has inherited. One case from 2009, and the oldest missing persons case in Warner Robins, the 1993 disappearance of Bula Mae Robertson. The facts of the case as reported by local news can't tell us much. Bula was last seen on October 5th of that year. Per WGXA-TV, one of the last official sightings of Bula Mae Robertson came in the early morning hours of October 5th, around 1:30 a.m. That's when she stopped by a neighbor's house, looking for one of the residents. One of the residents, Erica Bell, told the station that Bula, whom she knew as Miss Bula, left after just a little while. Erica explained that she was a good, humble person, would go out of her way for you and everything. That's why we didn't understand what happened to her. Didn't know anything. It was like she just vanished. According to WGXA, Beulah's youngest daughter would come by the Bells' house later in the day, looking for her, but they couldn't offer any help. They weren't sure where she'd headed next. What came after were weeks of investigation that attempted to trace Beulah's steps. Who had she seen? Where could she have run to? Bula was just 37 years old when she disappeared. Police records describe her, at the time of her disappearance, as a black female who weighed approximately 110 pounds and stood at 5'4". They were able to gather that information from her driver's license. According to police records, a friend had taken Bula to get her hair done over in Perry, Georgia that day. Apparently, Bula had chatted with a stylist at length, and various people reported seeing her before and after her haircut and style, a clear time marker since she switched up her style significantly. Bula left the salon with what one witness described as hair, quote, shaved on the back and sides, with blonde streaks in the front. Unfortunately, there was no photographic evidence of this new style to go with the missing persons bulletin the department would later release. Beulah's oldest daughter, Makisha, whom we spoke to for this series, didn't see her mother after Bula got her hair done, so she was not able to give us a more specific description. But we know that her new hair would have been a distinguishing feature to anyone who saw Bula that day. She also had a gold lower lateral incisor. That's the tooth in position 23 on the dental chart, and it was visible when she smiled. That tooth might be another detail that anyone who saw her on October 4th or the early hours of October 5th might remember. At this point, decades later, several detectives have inherited and then passed on her case, and a thick stack of information. There have been plenty of leads gathered regarding Bula's disappearance. What's needed most now are a few final tips to help connect all the dots. And that may come. Recently, Houston County Attorney General and Middle Georgia Crime Stoppers have collaborated to offer a reward of up to $8,000 in her case. The sergeant currently assigned to Bula's disappearance, Justin Clark, hopes that might bring forward people willing to talk. So do her daughters, who were just teenagers when their mother disappeared. They've heard rumors long enough. It's time for concrete answers in their mother's disappearance. Bula was from Central Georgia, and her extended family stretched across Warner Robins and the surrounding areas, creating a strong network of relations. Her daughters were 15 and 19 in October of 1993. Makisha, her oldest child, spoke to us for this episode. She was a college student back then, and not living at home when her mother disappeared, but she was there often enough to reflect on the time around Bula's disappearance. And she was able to talk to us about her mother and their life when she was growing up. The towns Makisha talks about in the next section may sound familiar. Perry and Hawkinsville came up often in our coverage of the disappearance of Shikemia Pate, who was last seen in Unadilla, Georgia, in 1998. Warner Robins is about a 40-minute drive from Unadilla and only 20 to Perry. Brooke asked Makisha if she could tell us more about her mother's childhood, and she started by letting us know that Bula was the middle child.
She was born in Perry, Georgia, but she grew up in a small town in Houston County called Grovania, Georgia. She had 7 sisters and 6 brothers, and most of the family stayed around in this area. We just, a happy family. We stayed with my grandparents, her mom and dad. We went to Warner Robins, moved to Warner Robins a couple of times, moved back to Grovania, and the last time we moved to Warner Robins, that's when she went missing. Me and my sister. I have a sister.
So tell me about Grovania.
It's in the country, per se. It's in the rural area, outside of Perry and Hawkinsville, and it's just a country town where everybody knew everybody. Our family, most of us all grew up there. Some of us still stay, there and not too far from there. So everybody knew everybody. It was just most of my family was there, stayed there in Grovania. We just enjoyed each other, loved to have a good time.
So what's the age difference between you and your sister?
5 years. I would say we really hung out a lot when we got older. But, when we was kids, she played with her age group. I played with my age group. But when it was just me and her, when we moved to Warner Robins, just me and her, yeah, we played together. But when we stayed in Grovania, we was all cousins, so we all played with everybody. Everybody played with everybody because everybody around us was family.
Well, I would love to get some more ideas of things your mom liked. What was she interested in? Any of her favorite things?
I know she just liked to have a good time. She liked at parties. She liked family gatherings. She liked when the family got together because, every year, my granddad would barbecue a hog for the 4th of July, and our whole family and then some would always come, on holidays and all that. My mama was the cook of the family, so she would cook dinner for everybody. She would do meals for people like Thanksgiving. They were, hire her to do their meals and cake. She was a good baker. She was a good cooker. That was some of her passion. She loved to cook and bake. They would always hire her to do bake and cook for them and their families. I have 2 of her favorite recipes that she loves to make. She loved to make this ground beef casserole that I learned from her. And also, she loves to make banana pudding from scratch. I love to do that. I love to bake also. That was one of the things I took from her is she always told me, one day you're going to be married. So, yeah, everybody outside playing, but you learn how to cook. When you get a husband and you get a children, you'll know how to do this one day. I'm glad that was some of the things that she made me do because now, I have kids and I have a husband. And so it wasn't hard, nothing for me that I would have to hurry up and try to learn because I already knew how to do it.
Makisha told us that one of the things Bula was known for in her family was her personality, friendly and fun. She remembers hearing stories of what her mother and aunts got up to when they'd lived out in the country as teenagers, before Makisha and her sister were born.
They would always joke about how they would, like, her and her sisters would, like any other teenagers would do, they would sneak out and get my granddaddy car and joyride and have a good time. And her and my other aunts, they would go out and have a good time and do any other thing like a normal teenager would do.
She was a fun person.
Yes. She always made sure we had birthday party, Easter. She always made sure, like, we had the best Easter dress and everything a kid would want. On Valentine's Day, she would always come to my school and she would always bring me a balloon and flowers. I used to tell her, don't come to my school because don't nobody, other parents come here and bring nobody no balloons and stuff. Even when I got to high school, she still did the same thing. Valentine's Day or my birthday, her and my aunts, they would always come to the school and bring me gifts. If it was Valentine's Day, she would bring balloons and just, made me feel like I was special. Anything I asked for, anything I wanted as a child, she gave it to me. She got it. And as well as my sister, like the same thing. Birthdays and stuff, she would always do stuff for us. My mom was funny. She would make us laugh. She was just the light of the party, a light of the gathering. She was just fun. She was always happy, upbeat, and a single parent doing the best you can. But, we never went without anything.
Not everything was easy in the years leading up to Bula's disappearance. She had to have 2 surgeries fairly close together, which meant a longer recovery. But, according to police reports, her family told investigators that she was otherwise healthy. Still, Makisha told us that Bula was still feeling sore that October and not quite up to her usual self. At the time of her disappearance, Bula lived at home with her youngest daughter and had plenty of family and friends nearby, and was in regular contact with Makisha. Another important factor that comes up in Bula's case is the role that narcotics may have played in her disappearance. Various people reported to law enforcement that Bula had a substance dependency that, per police records, was verified by some close to her and called a falsehood by others. When her 15-year-old daughter woke up on October 5th, 1993, Bula wasn't home. Bula sometimes stayed out late, but her daughters felt it wasn't like her to simply not return at all. On the morning of October 5th, Bula's oldest daughter, Makisha, who you'll recall was in college at the time, came by her mother's house. Her boyfriend had dropped her off there so she could catch a ride with a friend to class. That's when she found her younger sister, who'd already been looking for Bula, alone.
The day before I had talked to her, my uncle, which was her brother, she had went and got to her hair done, and he was dropping her off back home. At the time, I was in college, and I wasn't home. I was coming there the next day. I talked to her when she arrived back home. I didn't know she was going back out because she had surgery like a couple weeks before that. So she was still sore from having that surgery. I had no idea, and when I got there that morning, it was kind of odd to me because I got there around like 6:30 something in that time frame. And I was like, she wasn't there. So that wasn't normal to me because she usually be home. And I called everybody I could call that I would think that she would be with or left with or whatever. Nobody, had said they had seen her. And I asked my sister, she said she didn't know. She was asleep. I just looked for her the whole day. And therefore it's on until, we start hearing rumors of, well, I seen her last night with this person or I seen her last night with whatever. And that was kind of odd to me because my mom don't hang out with those type of people. We looked and looked and looked, but that's what they said.
Can you talk about how your family came together at the time?
Well, when I told them, my family, all her brothers and sisters went looking for her, went asking people about her. My sister was in school. I had to stop college and we had to move back to Grovania to my grandparents' house because, I couldn't see about her and me trying to go to school. They rally around us and see about us, but we never stopped looking. They went out and looked and asked people and searched, and all we knew to do.
When we went to Warner Robins, we were able to speak with Sergeant Justin Clark, who's the most recent investigator assigned to Bula's case. We reviewed the file in the office and were able to lay out some facts and the witness statements concerning Bula's known location and the earliest days of the investigation. Sergeant Clark was, of course, not on the case at that time, but was able to provide a summary based on the case notes.
She resided on Peachtree Circle in the 200 block, but from what I was told and from what was gathered, she would spend time in a place called Old Town. Now, that's an area in Warner Robins that some people call Old Town. Others have called it in the past the Bubble because it's almost like a giant semicircle with roads going in between. But that's going to be Old Mission, Orchard Way, Orchard Pass, and those streets in there. Was also told that she would frequent the Robbins Motel, which has now been torn down, but back then it was on First Street. First Street has now been renamed Armed Forces Boulevard, so depending on how long you've been in the area as to what name you know it by. Now, the area of First Street where the Robbins Motel was known as Jodytown, and that encompassed 1st, 2nd, 3rd Street. There's some housing authority back behind that area off of Martin Luther King, but it was known as Jodytown back then, and there was a pretty high amount of drug activity and crime and things like that.
Can you talk to us about the night of her disappearance?
So she was reported missing on the 5th of October, 1993. The person who actually took the report is our now chief, John Wagner. This was back whenever he was a patrol officer, but her family reported her missing, stating that she had been to get her hair done in Perry and had come back, but at some point during the evening, she left and was possibly going to visit a friend, but nobody's been able to 100% say where she was going at that time.
At the top of the show, we mentioned that Bula stopped by Erica Bell's house, but she seems to have moved on from there to visit someone else. In the next section, you'll hear Sergeant Clark mention Detective Rice. He's the first investigator who was assigned to Bula's case. While Bula's family was conducting their own search in the days after her disappearance, the department was collecting information, then going to speak with people at various locations around town. Some people would report seeing Bula at numerous places, including walking on the street with a friend, at the aforementioned Robbins Motel, or in a car with several other people. The difficulty came in verifying any of these sightings. They continued well after the 5th, with some people even stating that they saw Bula alive and well close to 2 weeks after she disappeared. But that seems unlikely. There was no activity on her accounts and no direct contact with family. A check was cashed in Bula's name at a local grocery store, but there was no verification that Bula herself was the person to complete the transaction. This happened less than 2 weeks after her disappearance.
What kind of information was circulating about Bula's disappearance right after she went missing?
So the original detective got quite a few different leads and people calling in. Some people still saying, oh, well, I heard that Bula was on North Davis Drive last night, or I heard that she was walking down Ignaco last night, things like that. Or also people saying that they had seen her, and pretty much, of course, all those were investigated, they were looked into, and it was either a case of mistaken identity or they just weren't able to substantiate anything on, her actually being seen. People were saying that she had been to the Robbins Motel and that she had been seen there. There was one caller, at least, that stated that she had been seen at the Robbins Motel and been seen getting into a green Mitsubishi Eclipse with 3 men. That lead was ran down. The 3 men were spoken to by Detective Rice, who was the original detective, and there was never anything to say that she had actually been with these men. They all denied seeing her, denied knowing her, or having anything to do with it.
There's another important aspect to touch on: the reputation of some of the places where Bula was said to have been spotted. According to police records, in 1993, the Robbins Motel had a reputation for drug activity. To our knowledge, no one was able to 100% place Bula there on the night of her disappearance, but the simple association with the area is something that made Makisha wonder if her mother's case got less coverage.
How did you feel about the media coverage of her case at the time?
It was short. It was very short and vague. It wasn't even a good 20 seconds, good 10 seconds.
She also wonders if the association of Bula with drugs, which was something that came up early in the case, could be the reason a suspect was not pursued and eventually charged. It certainly could have affected witnesses' willingness to say something on record should they have direct information of what might have happened to her. But people were talking, because within a fairly short period of time, there were tips and leads that pointed toward a set of individuals in town as the parties responsible for Bula's disappearance. And, the rumors said, her death.
I don't know if it was just because at the time I just felt like area of where they said that my mom first went missing, or the last place they seen her, that's a place where drug addicts and stuff hang out at. I felt like that's what he was seeing, just another drug addict out here in the streets, rather than this is my mom that I'm passionate about and I want to find, rather than, you know what I'm saying? And I just think that all the stuff that people was telling him about the person that's supposed to did something to her is the same person. The story haven't changed from the beginning to now. The story have not changed. So I don't feel like it was a lot of effort was put in at first.
Trust and Will is an online estate planning service. Visit trustandwill.com for details.
Trust and Will.
My dad and I were always close, but some things we just didn't talk about, like his will. After he was gone, we found out he didn't have one, and it created a lot of stress during a time of grief.
Creating a will can be hard to think about, but avoiding it can lead to greater difficulty for the people you love. That's why Trust and Will makes estate planning simple. Create a will online in as little as 30 minutes.
Now, I have a will in place to make sure my loved ones are protected. With Trust and Will, it was easy and affordable, and I got peace of mind knowing my wishes are clear.
Trust and Will. Get 20% off when you visit trustandwill.com/future. That's trustandwill.com/future to get 20% off. trustandwill.com/FUTURE.
One thing we've learned over the past 5 years is that what feels like enough evidence to make an arrest and what a DA might sign off on for trial aren't always the same. What can feel like so much, people who say they've heard confessions, seen bodies, seen weapons, helped dispose of items from a scene, all that can feel like more than enough to build a case. And with the cases of the wrongfully convicted that we see in the news today, the evidence that they were charged and eventually found guilty on can seem much flimsier than what can seem obvious to a family in their open cold cases. But there can be requirements: a physical item, a direct confession, a recording, a recovered bullet, that a DA will want before they're willing to move forward. We aren't privy to the precise information that Warner Robbins needs to solve Bula Robertson's case, but we do know that her disappearance is treated as, quote, foul play suspected, and that they have developed, as Makisha mentioned, a steady person or persons of interest over the last decades. And that information about that person or persons has continued to accrue. In terms of motive, there are several theories that have been offered up through the Warner Robins rumor mill, with the primary focused on a debt owed by Bula to a suspect or suspects. But again, proof is what's needed. When we visited the station, we spoke with Sergeant Justin Clark about possible suspects in Bula's disappearance and what information the department needs to close her case.
You told us that there was someone who was indicated as a person of interest in Bula's disappearance and possible murder. What can you tell us about that?
So initially, there was one suspect that at some point in the investigation, this person's name came up by several different people. There was a lot of street talk and sources saying that this person possibly had something to do with Bula's disappearance and had possibly killed her. This person back then was in their late teens, early 20s. He stayed on this side of town where all this happened. He was a known figure in the criminal community at that point. He was very known by law enforcement. They had had quite a few dealings with him. He was rumored to sell a pretty fair amount of narcotics, drug distribution, and also had some violent crime history, even at that time. He was from South Houston and Pulaski County area and still had some family that stayed out there in that area as well. I know back in '93, this person would hang out a lot around the east side of town, over off of North Davis Drive, over in Old Town, places like that. He was known to sell narcotics and sell crack cocaine in these areas, had people that sold drugs for him as well, and had a lot of connection to people in Pulaski County. We're also told by information from back then and from more current information that we've gotten that the suspect possibly was bragging about what he did and possibly showing off certain aspects of the crime and things used in the crime. Of course, if that's the case and anybody has any kind of firsthand knowledge of that, that could be very groundbreaking for this case for somebody to call in about. The person of interest was also known at that time, or we were told at least at that time, that he was driving a larger body sedan, something like a box Chevy or Oldsmobile Buick, just a larger box style car. Information had also come in back then and also more recently with some interviews that I've done with a couple of witnesses who were not mentioned in the original file, but we've been able to locate since then, was that Bula was possibly in his trunk for a period of time. Also, there was rumors and more street talk that went around during the early 90s when this happened, but also more recently with people that we've spoken to, that Bula was possibly killed over a money dispute or a dispute involving narcotics, and that once that had happened, she was taken to a place, quote unquote, in the country, is what they called it, which would have been, to my understanding, in the South Houston County and Pulaski County area, and buried on possibly some family property in that area. I think one thing that I would definitely like to say is that a lot of the information that we had surrounding her disappearance and possible death was that although multiple people may not have been involved in her death, a lot of the witness information is that people were around who heard about it directly and possibly had knowledge from things that they had seen, possibly her after she was deceased and things such as this. Again, it's been a long time, and we just want to make sure that if people saw anything that they can call and they can let us know. Honestly, anything can be helpful. A lot of times what is very insignificant that somebody remembers from back then could be of great significance to me. There's a large case file here, there's a lot of information, so something small could be very significant and groundbreaking in the case, but really anything, if they knew Bula during that time, if they saw her in the month of October. I know it's been a long time and it's kind of hard for people to remember times and dates and things like that. But if they can remember around the time she was missing, seeing anything unusual, if there was any firsthand knowledge about anything that would have happened to her, where she went, where she ended up. It's been a long time. A lot of the people that were involved in this case as possible suspects are no longer in the area. In fact, the one person that we did speak about already, he's incarcerated in another state. So my hope is that some people who were fearful back then may come forward now and be willing to speak to me now that, it's been so long and the person responsible or that I suspect to be responsible for it is no longer in the area and wouldn't be a danger to them.
And there's a reward, correct?
There is. Our district attorney has put up $8,000 as a reward for information that would lead to arrest and conviction in this cold case, as well as several other ones that we're working. District Attorney Will Kendall put up the money to try to help get some closure for some of these families.
And if anyone's listening is uncomfortable speaking with the police, how could they contact to share information?
Well, first off, if they feel comfortable enough with it, they are welcome to call my direct line in my office. It's 478-302-5384. They don't have to give me their name or any information. I'm not going to backtrack their number and go hunt them down or anything. If they want to stay anonymous, I'm totally fine with that. You also have Crime Stoppers, which is out of Macon.
We'll give you that number at the close of the show, along with the department's information. Ultimately, the information that the different investigators have gathered on the case has been consistent. The same person or persons claimed responsibility for Bula's murder soon after her disappearance, and multiple people in Warner Robins were made aware of this, both directly and indirectly. Some even said they saw Bula after she was killed, but before her body and the murder weapon were disposed of. With that horrific information, that Bula's body could have been shown to multiple people in a car trunk after her death, and then moved to a different location that some in town knew about, specifically knew the location of, it should be possible to locate her remains, if this story is true. But without a few more connecting threads, which the public can offer, Makisha and her family are left with a missing persons case, and not a homicide case. Drug crime and drug activity seem to have a relationship to Bula's disappearance and death, but that doesn't define her or her life, especially not in Makisha's eyes. She doesn't want her mother's memory or legacy reduced down to the circumstances surrounding her disappearance, or her legacy tied into a small piece in the larger portrait of who Bula was.
How do you carry on your mom's memory in your own family?
We talk about it. We have gatherings when me and my family get together. We always talk about how we grew up and some of the stuff that she loved to do and how she was just a people person. We share those memories, and sometimes we have like a memory weekend where we cook food and the family come over and we make T-shirts and stuff like that. So her memory will always live on. We would never let it die.
Can you think of anything else you would love to tell us about your mom?
She was always passionate about her children. She was passionate about me and my sister doing the right thing, knowing right from wrong. She was passionate about that. She was very passionate about showing us the way of life and showing us the right from wrong and what we need to do in this world. That was some of the things that she instilled in us.
Please remember, Bula Mae Robertson's disappearance and probable murder are very, very solvable. All Warner Robins police need are people who are willing to speak up, and there is an $8,000 reward available in her case. If you have any information regarding Bula's case, please call the Warner Robins Police Department at 478-302-5384 or Macon Crime Stoppers at 1-877-68-CRIME. If you know of a case that should be covered on the Fall Line, there's a link to the case submission form in our show notes. Thank you for listening. The Fall Line is an independently produced show, and we appreciate listener support. It allows us to do research, obtain FOIA, pay our content advisors, and support and donate to the causes we care about. If you try out the products we advertise, please use our sponsor codes. It really helps. And if you'd like to support the show and the stories we cover, join us on Patreon. All of our Patreon earnings fund the Millbrook Twins billboard and go to the therapy fund for families who've been on the show. Each and every one of our patrons helps us continue that work, and we're so grateful. On Patreon, you can get early release, ad-free versions of our regular episodes for $5 a month. We've also added occasional live streams and blogs, which all patrons can enjoy starting at just $1. If you prefer Apple Premium, we're beginning that feed as well, so you have an alternative way to contribute. The Fall Line is written, hosted, and researched by Laura Norton, with additional research by Brian Waters, Kiana Burgess, and Michaela Morrill. Interviews by Brooke Hargrove. Produced, engineered, and scored by Maura Curry. Line editing by Bill Bertschinger. Content advisement by Brandy C. Williams, Liv Fallon, and Vic Kennedy. And, as always, our most special thanks to Angie Dodd and Sarah Turney. Currently, our monthly donation is going to private investigations for the missing. Please join us in supporting this nonprofit. They need funds to help families access the services of PIs.